Support for KQED Science is provided by the National Science Foundation, the Follis Family Fund, the Mary Van Voorhees Fund, the S.D. Bechtel Jr. Foundation, the David B. Gold Foundation, the Dirk and Charlene Kabcenell Foundation, the Vadasz Family Foundation, the Wyncote Foundation, and the Amgen Foundation. Support is also provided by the members of KQED.
Lakes. We depend on them for drinking water, for food, and for pleasure. But many of America's 40 million acres of lakes and reservoirs are in trouble, threatened by the impending forces of pollution and development. I'm Simran Sethi. This Quest documentary takes us to majestic Lake Tahoe. Straddling the border of California and Nevada, it's the clearest lake of its size in our nation. For decades, scientists, inspectors, and other concerned citizens have gone to great lengths to sustain the clarity of these iconic waters. Efforts that hopefully will act as a blueprint for restoring the quality of lakes everywhere.
Hang out down there or something.
Do you think you can do a big jump, or you want me to help you?
Big jump.
Big jump. All right, let's see it. Good job. Welcome ashore. Look at all the little chairs.
I know.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I used to come up during college and hang out with different groups of friends. So when they planned this annual 4th of July thing, I jumped on it and then invited my friend here who hasn't been up here before, and her son.
Right. What you're going to do is you're going to pull that and put it right on the end of your pole. Oh. This is your home.
I'm going to be here?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I am born and raised in the city. As an East Coast person, you almost give up, on how gross lakes can be back east. So I had always imagined Tahoe to being like this last frontier.
The first time I saw Lake Tahoe, I think I was a grad student at UC Berkeley. And I come from the driest continent. I come from Australia. And it was just amazing. I mean, to see this incredible expanse of fresh water. It's the 11th deepest in the world, the second deepest in the US. And for a lake of its size, it is without doubt the clearest lake. The blueness comes in large part from just the incredible cleanliness of it, so that the sunlight that's penetrated but then comes back gives it this really deep cobalt blue.
I'll be doing a Secchi reading today, and that's a routine measurement that we do to look at lake clarity. When we try and translate lake clarity to the public, what they want to know is how deep into the lake can they see. And so I'll be lowering the Secchi disc down into the lake until it disappears and getting our clarity reading for the day.
How many feet down could you see today?
18 meters, or right around 60 feet. And that's pretty typical for a summertime reading, so the Secchi does vary seasonally. It's somewhat of a compliment when people start making comic strips about your work. It means that they really do understand it. I do have to have my eyes checked on a regular basis.
It's interesting, the very first measurements, Secchi measurements taken in Lake Tahoe were taken 140 years ago. This was by the first professor hired by the University of California, a fellow by the name of John LeConte. He didn't have a plastic Secchi disc, but he had his wife's white china. And he would lower this down into the lake, and he would take, regularly record measurements at around 100 feet. So we know what they were 140 years ago, and we know what they are now. If we can cut off things like pollutant flows into the surface, then we would estimate that in something like 20 to 30 years, the lake's clarity could be restored if all the right things were done. The ultimate goal is to restore clarity to what it was back in the 1960s. That's a Secchi depth reading of about 97 feet. Right now we're at about 70 feet, so that's a large change. It's not a very pretty sight if you fly over it when the drains and streams are running. You see brown water coming in. It's due in large part to very fine particles, things like dust that's coming from the roads, and also steep dirt surfaces are very prone to erosion. So the fine particles interfere with sunlight. This is actually the same size particles that are in a photocopier toner. So it's almost like a liquid, it's just so fine. And that's a real challenge to remove those from the water because they settle incredibly slowly. The three things that are causing the decline of clarity are fine particles and the two nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus. The largest source of nitrogen are automobile emissions. And we Americans, we love our cars. Phosphorus is what the algae just can't get enough of. Volcanic soils tend to be a little bit higher in phosphorus. And it turns out to be a fortunate coincidence that the phosphorus is actually attached to the particles. So whatever we can do, whatever successes we can have at removing particles or trapping particles, we're also trapping phosphorus. Probably the largest source are the urban areas, where people are. And what we've done there is we've taken what used to be relatively flat land, maybe it was a meadow, maybe it was a marsh, with this great ability to infiltrate water and pollutants, and we've replaced it with asphalt and concrete that has no ability to infiltrate nutrients.
This is the Tahoe Keys, which was built in a big marsh, a very large marsh. When I was in college, I came home one weekend and my parents said, "Oh, you should go down and look at what they're doing to the swamp." People were really excited to have this. I mean, it's going to be wonderful, and we're going to have all these great lagoons, and these were being built all over California. The Tahoe Keys was, of course, the largest disaster for Tahoe. The wetland is destroyed. There is no wetland.
When the Tahoe Keys were built, they made it so that that entire portion of the wetland was no longer functioning. It wasn't filtering storm waters or river flows that were coming through the river any longer.
There is better water treatment in marshes than anything else. And those are the kinds of things they're studying and trying to figure out how to restore the river, how to restore the wetland.
The project that we're constructing here is going to build a new channel in the open meadow area, and it will flood onto the adjacent meadow much more frequently. About 120 acres of meadow floodplain. We'll be restoring it from a dry meadow condition, turning it back into a wet meadow, wetland condition. The wetland itself will actually treat the floodwaters for fine sediment and nutrients before they're delivered further downstream. The fine sediments actually drop out onto the floodplain surface and are then incorporated into the meadow and into the vegetation.
I live and work in Lake Tahoe, so I have a personal interest in keeping Lake Tahoe blue and contributing to that.
I think we have to learn to love it and learn to be here, but without doing harm. There's anecdotal information of just a tremendous loss of clarity. The first development followed the discovery of silver in Nevada. In the late 1860s, 1870s, the entire forest in the Tahoe Basin was cut down, and that timber was taken to Nevada and used for the mines. The silver sort of came and went, the forest regrew, and the lake recovered naturally. It took 20, 30, 40 years, but clarity was restored. And it stayed that way until about the 1950s. We had the Olympics here at Squaw Valley.
Washington sent Vice President Nixon and 10,000 cars around the parking lot.
There was this great rush to development, and it was largely unplanned.
The thing that really got people aware of the problem at the lake was when they were going to build a bridge over Emo Bay through the property of a lot of influential people from San Francisco. And they incorporated as the League to Save Lake Tahoe. And they got the first compact approved in Congress. So it was a compact between California and Nevada. They agreed that Tahoe was threatened and that Tahoe needed to be protected by a planning agency, a regional planning agency.
This degradation of lakes was really happening worldwide in the 1960s. And Lake Tahoe, because it was just so pristine at that time, it became a poster child for the risk of losing that. Partly in response to early measurements done by UC Davis that showed clarity was declining, there was this moratorium, this restriction on any building till the impacts could be studied. If sort of uncontrolled development would have kept occurring, then I don't think we'd be having this conversation today. Lake Tahoe would be far less clear than it is. It may not be the tourist attraction that it is. It would just be another lake.
It's a national treasure that must be protected and preserved.
What's pretty wonderful for people who have the opportunity to live here or visit here is that you're really living in an environment that does have all the hallmarks of a national park, but anybody can come here, anybody can live here. And the trick is, how do we keep that quality and keep using it?
The local agency is the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, which is called the TRPA by everybody up here. It's a bi-state and federal agency that was created for both from California, Nevada, and the federal government to protect the lake. And in a lot of cases, you have to hire an expert that deals with the TRPA just to get through all the necessary paperwork and all the requirements they have.
It seems like your agency isn't very well liked among property owners.
Well, I think it's a real mixed bag. I think that most of the people in the basin agree that a regional authority to protect Lake Tahoe's environment is absolutely necessary, but it's all about how we get there.
My home is a French manor. Okay, it took 2 years to get permits. Their preferred colors are brown and green. Okay. And I had lighter colors they wouldn't allow, and we made it dark enough for them to allow it. what does this have to do with preserving the lake? We created an agency that everybody up here believed in, but all of a sudden they're more concerned if somebody's in a boat looking up, is the looks of the house going to be appealing to them? I bought the Calneva and closed escrow December 28th of 1985. The Calneva is the oldest standing casino in the United States. In 1926 is when it originally started as a casino illegally. The California-Nevada state line runs through the Calneva. So they'd literally, the stories go that when the sheriff was coming up from Placer County, they'd move it into Nevada and vice versa. Sinatra brought an enormous amount of attention to the Calneva when he bought it in 1960. He invited out Marilyn Monroe. There was different cabins, one she stayed in and one Frank stayed in, and I went and redid the cabins back to how they originally looked. She was all into pink and had a round bed. Calneva, I ran it very successfully for 21 years. I got fed up with the TRPA. After 5 years trying to do an expansion, I sold it in 2005. And you get to the point where it's just not worth it. Life is too short.
Gone are the days when TRPA just stamped a big no on every plan that came through the door. And we agree that a lot of these permit processes have taken too long. So we're working on streamlining them by helping local jurisdictions take on the role of environmental stewardship.
Local governments see development as providing a local tax base, and that's their incentive. And that's why local governments should not be in charge of protecting the lake. But the TRPA plan hands it over to them, hands over the permitting and the planning.
Too much dirt. Is that you're gonna top that with new gravel, Robbie?
Yeah. We're gonna put in that sediment trap and then so a channel drain.
Today we are here to maintain Brad's BMP, which is his best management practice.
Lake Tahoe is full of acronyms, and one acronym's a BMPs, or Best Management Practices. And it's really just saying what's the state of knowledge as to how we can best prevent contaminants from running into the lake. They're all aimed at trying to keep things where they originate.
Basically, everyone needs to pave their driveway, so when it rains, it doesn't wash sediment off your compacted dirt driveway and into the creek. And then you need to capture and treat the stormwater runoff from your roof and from your driveway so that it doesn't leave your property. What he's asked us to do is to install a sediment trap at the end of the channel drain.
That one trench drain is about $2,000. I think that it's very important, and I personally don't mind at all doing it, and not only am I willing to do it, I think it's really important to put in these filtration systems.
When it rains real hard, I can watch the water come off of the street and through my driveway and across my property, and it is definitely moving soil. We'd all love to have a paved driveway because it certainly makes life a lot easier. I just am in a situation where I can't financially afford it at this time.
About 34% of the property owners in the basin have put in their BMPs so far. So we have a long way to go.
We just got the Calneva. We're going to redo the Calneva. This is the infamous Sinatra showroom. He actually had the artwork commissioned, some famous artist out of LA at the time, to depict the history of theater. It's one of these much debated things among our own team, whether we like it or not.
So you fully intend to comply with the best management practices?
100%, no question, definitely. As a business owner here, you have to realize the lake protection is a primary thing for every resident here, any visitor, anybody here, because without the lake, nobody cares about any of this at the end of the day.
Tahoe's warming the same rate as the other Great Lakes of the world. We've had some summers where the surface temp is very, very warm compared to 25 years ago.
I actually think climate change is starting to exert an influence on the clarity. A bit of the role of algae, so like these microscopic floating plants. So the fact that we have more now gives the lake a different color. If it was to continue shifting, it would be moving towards green. We're starting to separate what happens in summer and what happens in winter. In winter, there actually has been an improvement because of many of these stormwater projects that have gone in. In winter, that's when we get snow and snow melting off the roads, and that seems to have improved. On the other hand, the summer clarity has unquestionably continued degrading at about the same rate. The ultimate goal is to have clarity at around 97 feet. Whether we can reach it, I don't know, but it's a good goal, and there are other factors like climate change and invasive species that we may learn in time may make that impossible.
See the stuff on the water over there? That's milfoil. It's an aquatic invasive plant, and it invades all of the Keys. It's in Emerald Bay, it's up on the North Shore, it's over on the East Shore. It's really all over now. And each one will root and grow another plant like this. The way it gets into the lake, it's by the boat, because it will stick to the propeller in some way, and then it just goes taken out into the lake.
First and foremost, we're stopping the spread of aquatic invasive species, and the big one is the zebra mussel and the quagga mussel. The whole goal of this thing is to get the water coming out of the exhaust at 140 degrees for 10 seconds. And that would kill anything there. You have been inspected, and the boat has not been removed from the trailer. It's a one-time, one use.
You know, it's time consuming and it costs money, but I think it's well worth it. You know, we love the lakes and want to keep them nice, so we're willing to do it.
And how much did it cost?
$80.
I think the mussels have invaded Lake Mead and most of the Great Lakes, so they're trying to stop it from invading here. So they've really stepped up the program here.
How bad would it be if quagga mussels got in Lake Tahoe?
It'd be terrible. They could cover all the hard surfaces in the lakes. There's these awesome boulders and stuff like that. Those could all be covered.
It turns out that about 60% of our lakes are degraded. This is our drinking water. This is water we use to sustain our life.
Got one, got one, got one, got one, got one.
And Lake Tahoe is actually a place people have been rallying around and saying, well, maybe some of these problems can be tackled at Lake Tahoe. There's a desire to do it. Maybe we can experiment here and see what works and what doesn't work. hundreds of thousands, millions of lakes around the country, around the world. They'll be the beneficiaries of these investments.
Support for KQED Science is provided by the National Science Foundation, the Follis Family Fund, the Mary Van Voorhees Fund, the S.D. Bechtel Jr. Foundation, the David B. Gold Foundation, the Dirk and Charlene Kabcenell Foundation, the Vadasz Family Foundation, the Wyncote Foundation, and the Amgen Foundation. Support is also provided by the members of KQED.